At this point, are there any questions you have? Any areas we could focus on? Or
if I'm gonna be healthy, maybe that's something.
Yeah, absolutely. Just good to keep in mind. You're going to deal with a little bit of a stomach issue, and it's kind of funny the way this comes across. So, oh geez. All right, that stomach.
Well, I have stomach problems.
Yes.
That's the only problem I have.
That's the only one.
That's wild.
But there are two.
I'm leaving. This is crazy.
Yes, your stomach.
I have stomach problems.
Really good to keep in mind. So
you always want me to check it out. I never get it checked out.
I believe it. Well, the thing is you have a susceptibility to, actually, when it comes to processing intestinally, you do have an area of inflammation that looks kind of similar to like what I've seen in people with Crohn's or IBS.
My mother has Crohn's.
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
I know. So
this is crazy.
Yeah, so you might have Crohn's. I would just check and run that by a doctor. Not only will you notice like acid reflux and heartburn, but you'll notice like lower, some funkiness. So get checked for Crohn's.
Okay.
But other than that,
crazy. This is so cool.
I love it.
Weird. Okay. Let's look. So what they're having me reference to is an acknowledgement of a stroke, but there's two stroke messages. One is a stroke that an individual suffers and then passes away. Other is an incident in which an individual has a close call involving a stroke or something like a stroke, and they actually live and survive through this. The feeling is getting this, knowing that we're perfectly fine, and there's basically a thumbs up of like, this person's not going to have to worry about this issue again. I'm seeing kind of a susceptibility of almost what looks like blood clots, and that's something for me that looks preventable and avoidable, but this individual would have that susceptibility who also would have had this previous susceptibility to like a stroke-like incident.
That would be me.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a stroke September 23rd of 2015.
15? Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
From a blood clot. I was flying from LA back home to Atlanta from Dancing with the Stars.
Oh my God,
and I had a stroke. I was just normal. I went down to hug my son as soon as I pulled in my driveway, and then my hand started to go numb, but it was like numb times a gazillion, you know, like not the normal, like, shake it off. And I was like, oh, and then when I couldn't speak and I was trying to, was when it's so scary. Yeah, the stroke was life-changing, literally. Like, never thought at 37 I would have a stroke. And in front of my children, nonetheless. I've pretty much fully recovered, but I can't say that I don't think, like, could this happen again?
So weirdly, I have a couple different energies. I have a man that's coming through who's initially acknowledging that he does feel like he lived a relatively decent long period of a life. However, he's acknowledging the fact that he didn't feel like he got to get to like 70s, 80s. I feel like I passed away quick. I do feel like I passed abruptly. And then there is a reference. I would check to see who passed away of a heart attack. So check and see if you guys have any uncles, any people who would be like an uncle level who would have like suffered from a heart attack and passed away abruptly. Check and see on that side also if there's a V name. There's a reference to a V name in family.
V.
Okay. Yeah, which is interesting. It's like V is not a very common initial.
No, it's not.
So there's a reference to either like Vince, Vic, some form of like very strong V connection.
Wait.
Where's that?
Uncle Vince.
Who's Vince?
He was my mom's side of the family.
I think he was dad's side of the family.
Dad's side of the family.
Dad's side of the
Yes.
Uncle Vince.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, wait. Okay, now I'm starting to get it. My dad has told me that I resemble one of his uncles, and I think it was Uncle Vince, and he's always been a little worried about me because Uncle Vince passed away all of a sudden in the middle of nowhere from a heart attack.
Right.
And it was pretty early. I think it was in his early 40s, I want to say.
For sure. That would fit kind of what's coming through. They didn't feel like they got to 60 or 70 even.
Right,
So,
no, he was definitely in his 40s, and I know my dad has always told me to be very cautious. He thinks my body type is exactly like his.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing that you say that. It's the weirdest thing that you say that, because I swear to God on the car ride here, I said that I had the man who was coming through with the heart issue, and he was warning the living client that I would meet with about heart disease in his future.
Wow.
You gotta stop smoking.
That's insane.
I gotta stop
So,
smoking. Oh,
definitely
man.
good to keep it in mind. I don't see you going anywhere. I see your health being fine,
good.
but definitely keep in mind heart.
My dad is always like, you remind me so much of my Uncle Vince that you didn't get to meet. He says, so please be very, very careful of your heart.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Interesting.
I didn't even think it from my dad's side.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
Awesome.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I have had conflicting answers having to do with how I became deaf.
Right.
And I became deaf somewhere around 18 months of age.
Right.
And I don't let my deafness define me. Yet, I think it would be good, perhaps, just to know what it was. My parents took my deafness very hard.
Right.
Especially my dad.
He just came through and said that he thought you were stubborn like him.
That's exactly what she says. She says the same.
I'm like, what is it? Does that make sense?
That's exactly what. What do you tell the story?
Oh.
When she tells the story,
Yes.
this woman said, Marley is deaf. And her father said, no, she's just stubborn. That's exactly what she says.
When I'm looking at your deafness, I'm actually looking at a little bit more of a gradual process. It's odd. But there is also, interestingly, there was a susceptibility when you were a child, but you had a susceptibility to an infection or some form of an illness. And this is something that affects the immune system. It almost looks like we just have like a condition that a child deals with. However, I see this ultimately somehow affecting one's ability to hear. And it's kind of strange in the way that it comes across. I don't know if physiologically, if there are any explanations, or if it is just a coincidence.
But it kind of makes sense because
One family member said that I had a fever, and that as a result of the plane flight from Chicago to California is when I became deaf, when we arrived in California. And then my grandmother had a neighbor, or best friend actually, who was babysitting. And after they all came home from dinner, they said, she's deaf. He said, no, she's just stubborn. And then, of course, the rest.
Right, that makes sense, because it almost looks like this corresponds with like a fever, or like, again, like a childhood illness.
And I can accept that.
Yeah, definitely. I really want to keep this in mind. I have to talk about health, and it's kind of health with family. For the men in your family, it's really good to just take into consideration that blood pressure is going to be something that we really have to keep in mind. Now, heart issues, they happen to men. It's not uncommon, but the thing is that, let me see what that is. I don't even know where to start. When it comes to like a family and a gene perspective, it's possible that within your family there might be multiple men who end up at a later age dealing with blood pressure issues, but also deal with either a heart murmur or heart arrhythmia. But I feel like I have to kind of go to heart, and this kind of correlates with blood pressure. So just kind of keep that in mind. I have a couple people who've, you know, kind of came through and acknowledged passing in a bit of a similar sense, and it's almost saying like, keep in mind your own heart, because there's a man who was very stubborn who passed away, and he acknowledges dying as a result of this heart problem. His message is, don't be stubborn like I was. And the feeling is like, this is a strong guy, he's great, he's lovely, but he was really frustrated at the fact that he neglected this, because this is something that could have been treatable had we just known about it. I'm not wanting to go, and there's just a feeling of like, don't let you be me, basically, in the way this comes across. It's like, keep this in mind, be proactive in your health, do what I didn't, is kind of the message, so.
No history of heart disease.
Sure.
In the family.
Sure.
With the exception of my sister, had a heart issue, had open heart surgery. Delighted that she's fine now.
Great.
But it can't get much more serious than that.
Sure.
Just not a genetic line that we've known.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
That is unbelievable. You said the heart.
Right. And how that came through.
And we talked about it.
Right. I would say, honestly, if this is something that does come into play, it could affect men primarily. I'm not even looking at women so much. This is something that could affect men. So if you yourself notice like blood pressure or heart murmur, just see a doctor. But I feel almost like we have to kind of like really take this into consideration. I was really going on about that.
Yeah, you were.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that to heart.
Yes, absolutely.
I just don't understand.
When it's our time to go, you know, it's hard for us to understand.
Because I was always on top of him about his health.
Right.
Always on top of him about it.